All right, Chris and Joe show. Joe Huizinga, Chris Merrill, both of us have, our mothers are still with us, both in their 70s, though, I should say that. So, Joe, happy Mother's Day to your mom.
Oh, happy Mother's Day to your mom, Chris.
Yeah, she's not listening. Joy, I wanted to bring this up.
Explains our next guest.
We invited in Michael Klinkner. He's a family therapist. You've heard him on the show before, and hopefully we hear him lots again. Wanted to bring him in today with Mother's Day around the corner. This is one of those holidays that I find has either social media written all over it, or as I was talking with Kristen Benz this morning, who was in for Mike Broomhead, she said she's got friends that will not open social media this weekend because they don't want to see other people's Happy Mother's Day posts. They said it really bothers them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of my recommendations. If this is a tough day for you because your mom isn't around, you guys have not a great relationship, or any of the reasons what Mother's Day could be a tough day, stay off of social media. There's just too much, and where the adoration for their moms and like all of those posts are just going to be hard and really triggering for people that have lost their mom or have a strained relationship. And the anxiety and what they're going through is for real. It is honestly really hard in those moments to see all that. There's so much jealousy, the idea of like lost relationships and like what it could have been, but versus what it can never be again. Honestly, people end up going through a lot that day. You got to just stay away from it.
Michael, one of the things that I have noticed when I've been in therapy in the past is that the therapist starts to sound like an acquaintance from Boston. I sit down, and the first thing they say is, "How's your mother?" In other words, our mothers have such an influence on us. Is that biological? What is that, and why is it? Joe and we could break up. Right? And Joe and I could have this estranged relationship, and I could never talk to him. I have friends that I've fallen out with from when I was young that were very close friends. I haven't talked to in years, and I probably won't talk to again. That bothers me a little bit. But the idea of not being able to talk to my mother through like an estranged relationship, that seems like a deeper issue. Why?
Well, to your point, we are biologically predisposed from birth to have this very important bonded relationship with our moms. And so we do a great job now. Whenever a child is first born, they're placed, if they can be, right onto the mom's skin. There's the pheromones, looking in the eye, the feeding, all of that stuff. Honestly, there's brain chemistry and brain development that doesn't happen as well if there's that lack of initial bonding. And there's that lack of like pheromones, skin to skin bonding with the mom. It's prefrontal cortex issues, not issues necessarily, but developmental stuff really does happen as a result of being there with your mom in the beginning.
So do we imprint on our parents? Is that a thing?
They imprint on us.
Oh, they imprint on us.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
I've got my verbiage backwards then.
Yeah. And so then also, again, it's going to be cultural, but the idea of there's so much time with your mom. And it's, if you take like a very stereotypical like working dad, stay-at-home mom, like that kind of situation, which isn't as typical as it used to be. But there's so much. Mom's picking you up from school. Mom is the one making your lunch. Mom is the one doing a lot of like the heavy lifting on the household things. And if that's the case, then you just have so much more time and so much more interaction with her that's going to really form, good or not so good, who you are as a human.
Talking with our licensed family therapist, Michael Klinkner. Mother's Day coming up this Sunday. Michael, you just went prefrontal cortex on us.
I liked that.
I did too. Gets a little nerdy, though. I mean, what do you tell a patient, though? Like, for instance, I have this acquaintance of mine. She mentioned on Instagram, she said it's her first Mother's Day without her mom, and she hopes her mom is proud of her. I just sent her a real quick note and just said, I'm sure your mom is proud of you. I'm so sorry for your loss. But you don't sit there in the office and tell this person, oh, your prefrontal cortex is struggling to deal with your medulla oblongata. Your mom is thousands of miles away and you are bonded for all of eternity. What would you tell somebody who puts a message like that out there and comes to you for guidance?
Well, in adults, our moms are no longer like responsible for brain development, so she's probably pretty good at this point if she's posting. But like you can talk about like there's going to be issues with dopamine, there's going to be issues with serotonin, there's going to be depressive like states. Hallmarks like this, holidays, Mother's Day, anniversaries, birthdays, all of those things for like a lost mom are going to be grief-inducing days. Yeah. You're going to go through about how much you miss her. If you're a mom yourself, then how much like you love your children, but you miss your mom, which makes it a real mixed day. That's those markers and all of those emotions can very easily get triggered on a day like this and then with posts like that.
One of the biggest things that Chris and I talk about off the air at times too is as we get older, we're both in our 40s, it feels like things from our childhood come back up too. And especially, I'm guessing there are powerful feelings around a day, like you mentioned, social media. You see all these people throwing up posts on mom, Father's Day, all kinds of posts on dad. What is it about that 20s and 30s, we're totally cool, but then we hit our 40s and all of a sudden we're sitting there and just doing this deep thinking like, wow, is that why I'm going through this now? This happened when I was 8 and now I'm 42. What's going on?
It's a natural point in your development. And
is it a prefrontal cortex thing?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
It can be an attachment thing. And so there's different attachment styles. There's secure attachment styles versus insecure attachment styles. And so times like this, if you have an insecure attachment style, like an anxious attachment style or avoidant attachment style or disorganized, which means, either you run towards people or run away from people. How you feel about your mom, she also probably helped shape what your attachment style is based on how she raised you and her relationship with your dad or like stepdad or whomever.
Chris's mom doesn't listen, but I am confident she loves him. My mom listens every day and tells me all the time she loves me.
Yeah. Your mom calls and tells me she loves me too.
That's good.
Yeah. No, I think she's great. She's a fine woman. I'm very proud of her.
There you go.
Yeah. She's done a great job.
No, but that's going to be a good example of like a secure attachment style. Like your mom is there for you. She supports you. She's around a lot. And so, but if it were a little bit more of she wasn't there for you or you watched her like not have a great relationship with your dad. Obviously, I don't know what that was like, but
sure.
Then it's going to kick up a lot of those in your 40s as you're reflecting back. And if you have children and you're raising your own, then it's very much going to bring those things up about your own parenting and how you were parented, especially as you're like exploring your own like romantic relationships or like if you're with somebody, then like as I'm talking about those attachment styles, one, they're going to show up in lots of relationships. And then on Mother's Day, what can be happening is you're going to reflect on that relationship with your mom. And if it's secure, great. If it's not, then it's going to kick up all those emotions and kind of memories about what helped form those insecure attachment styles.
So is there I don't know, maybe this is an obvious question, but it sounds to me that you're saying that the secure attachment style, this positive reinforcement type relationship with your mother is great. Can there be something learned from the other sort where maybe you witnessed poor relationships that your mother had? Is that something that you can, in your older years, learn from? Mom was not great. I saw the relationship with dad. That's not what I want, for instance. In other words, sort of the negative, like a Polaroid negative, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a great point because lots of us are able to reflect on it and look back on what we saw and be like, oh, heck no. I'm not going there. By God, I'm going to be a different parent. And so, or I can have different relationships or whatever. And so, yeah, absolutely. And that doesn't have to be in your 40s. That can be in your teen years. That can be whenever, where you can see the way that you were raised. There's some, and again, you can have these insecure attachment styles and the person can still be a wonderful person and can still like be there for you in lots of different ways.
Okay.
But there's some parts of it like you just don't like. And so then I am not going to do that in my romantic relationships. I'm going to parent completely different. Like if my parents were busy a lot and both worked full-time jobs and like just couldn't be around a lot, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that I was a latchkey kid or something like that, for example. Then by God, I'm going to get some job. I'm going to get some shift. I'm going to work from home where I'm going to be around for my kids. Like I'm going to be there for them when they come home from school. I'm going to make that snack. And that's a good example of like, I don't like the way I was raised. Is it bad? Not necessarily, but I'm going the other way. That's for sure.
Michael Klinkner is a family therapist joining us as we talk about Mother's Day, which, as he mentioned, can be very triggering for a number of people. But then there are other questions about Mother's Day. Are we getting wrapped up in the emotion around Mother's Day, maybe a little bit to our own detriment? That is next. It's the Chris and Joe Show, KTAR News. Michael Klinkner is joining the Chris and Joe Show today. He is a licensed family therapist as we talk about Mother's Day, which I think is so celebratory for many people, but for probably an underrepresented group It is a really tough time. Michael, you mentioned that it can be very triggering for some people. Is there, and I know that we could probably have this same conversation around a number of different holidays. In fact, I had a therapist that told me that the holidays is the worst time of year for so many people. They really dread the holidays, which are supposed to be a wonderful and festive time. My wife is always looking for that Norman Rockwell holiday, or Thanksgiving and Christmas and everything else, and I tell her it doesn't exist.
Maybe it's the one more like The Bear. Have you seen that show?
Yes, yeah, very much. That's exactly what it is, and yet somehow we all bond around that. I'm just imagining if somebody has maybe not spoken with their mother in a while. Maybe they had a falling out. Maybe you married that floozy that your mother told you not to, and I hope she's worth it because you're never going to talk to me again. Is this a good time to reach out and say, Mom, it's Mother's Day. I was really thinking about you, and I want to let bygones be bygones. Is this a good time for repair, or is this a time where maybe we let the emotions get ahead of the logic, and maybe we should let those sleeping dogs lie a little longer? Yeah,
if I would say that if you're inclined to reach out on Mother's Day for repair, it's been on your mind anyway. It's probably been like simmering on the back of the stove for a while. You've been thinking about it, and you're just looking for like a natural point or a logical point to then reach back out again versus like a random Tuesday. Not like, okay, it's going to make sense, so therefore I'll do it. It would be really uncommon that someone has been very estranged and then, the Saturday before Mother's Day, they're like, that's it, I'm reaching back out. It's much more like, if you're feeling that way, sure. And I would always say, if you're looking to repair a relationship, whatever reasons you need, go ahead and do that. Absolutely. And so even if you attempt to repair and it doesn't go well, you get that off your chest. Like, you then know you've made those reasonable attempts. You've tried hard. Your side of the street is clean. And if there's not going to be a relationship, there's not going to be a relationship. But then you've reached out and done your part. And Mother's Day can be a perfectly good reason to do that.
Can it be even more devastating, though, if you do reach out, you put your neck out on the line, and then you're rejected by Mom, as we just talked about, that, my goodness, the attachment you had from Mom from the time you were born, and the umbilical cord is still connected, and you're lying on her chest, and now she's rejecting you even after you reached out and said, Mom, I love you. There's more important things, like our love is more important than you not liking my wife, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. Can it actually be detrimental in some ways? You said your side of the street is clear, but sometimes that's a little solace.
Yeah, that's a really good point, in that, like, would it feel somewhat less risky to reach out on a random Tuesday than on Mother's Day? Yeah, I can see that. But I think if you're reaching out to attempt to repair a difficult relationship, regardless of the relationship, but Mom around Mother's Day, if you're sticking your neck out, then the potential rejection there is going to hurt no matter what. Is it going to hurt worse on Mother's Day? I could see that. I could see the argument for that, but I'm not sure. I think it's, I think the idea that it's much more likely to work versus like it's going to feel like less of a risk. But also the idea that then I reached out to her on Mother's Day and she still didn't reach out. Like, I could see how that would hurt a little bit more, but I don't know if it'd be a whole lot worse than on like just some random day.
Talking with family therapist Michael Klinkner and following up on what Chris just brought up, if that reach out doesn't go well, is it a one and done? How do you work through with somebody going back to the well? Or obviously I'm sure you're going to say, well, it totally depends on the situation, Joe, but if that person says, well, gosh, I want to rekindle this relationship with Mom. I didn't feel like this went well. Is it, hey, I reach back out again in 2 weeks? Is it I find a mediator? How do you continue to try to heal a broken relationship with a parent?
It really depends on the situation, Joe.
That's why we have you here, Michael. Man,
Thank you so much.
That 50 I slipped you before the interview is totally paid off.
Made my day.
There's just so many factors. Because if it's an elderly mom and you're worried about this is like she's coming towards end of life, and so you want to really repair that before you run out of time, then I would argue that, okay, maybe there is this rejection, but maybe you try again in a little bit because you really want to get it together before you lose your mom. It's also going to depend a lot on how much of it was your fault? And like, what did you do? And how did you handle the situation?
Always takes two to tango.
Absolutely. And so like, if I went against my mom and I married that floozy and I knew that she was going to go against it, then I do have some culpability there. Should my mom have handled that better? Yeah. I did know what I was doing though. And so then, or if, if I said some things I really regret, if I was the one who pulled away and she chased for a while and now I'm reaching out, I would expect her not to reach back out again. She has a lot of hurt feelings on her side. And so there's a lot of dynamics that would be hard to predict there. Usually, like if this is the first time in years you reached out and then she doesn't reach out again, I would say give it some time and then probably try again, maybe around Father's Day, maybe some other time that's a reasonable point to try it again. And so you don't keep doing that forever. But there might be some really good reasons why she's not responding that may be your fault, maybe some other stuff going on that you don't even know about.
If you do reach out a couple times and you just don't feel like either A, maybe you're being totally stonewalled. Let's say that mom doesn't get back to you, says, hey, I don't want to have a relationship with you. How can you help an individual heal if mom isn't receptive to it? How do you simply sit there and say, well, you're going to have to go at it alone?
Yeah, that's grief. And so now you've lost your mom,
Yeah.
and you've also lost the hope of a repaired relationship, which is going to be complicated grief. And so you're going to go through those stages of like, I lost her. What does it mean? I thought I could get her back. What does it mean for like me or my kids or all that sort of stuff? And so, but again, that is a grief process. Something has died, and you have to begin to wrap your head around that, and then figure out what new potential normal could or should be.
Gotcha.
Michael Klinkner is with us. He's our family therapist as we talk about Mother's Day is here, and Mother's Day can be a wonderful time, or it can be very challenging for some people. You mentioned losing a mother, and we started our first segment here discussing how some people, in fact, you even recommended it, if you find Mother's Day and seeing other people's pictures on social media to be triggering, just stay away from those triggers. Is there maybe some value in trying to find, if, for instance, maybe this is your first Mother's Day after you've lost your mom, is there value in trying to see the joy in somebody else's relationship? Can you use that as a moment, not necessarily to trigger, oh my gosh, I lost my mom, but rather to trigger positive memories?
It can. It's going to be really complicated, though, because the idea then is going to be, I'm going to celebrate the idea of motherhood as a whole and how wonderful the idea of having a mom can be. And to look at all the posts, hey, newsflash, social media isn't real. And so then you're going to see all of these posts about all these relationships and great pictures, and they went to brunch together. Is it possible then for you to have a state of mind where it's like, I just love motherhood and celebrate what it means and what all can be? Yeah. If it's your first one without your mom, I don't know. That's a big ask. Could you do that down the road? Yeah, absolutely. I could see that, but not at first.
What questions do people bring up who come to you for some therapy that Chris and I haven't brought up today? Obviously, not looking for you to, divulge any confidentiality here, but what are there other things that people bring up with you that we haven't brought up today?
There's so much shame and guilt associated with not having a great relationship with your mom. You feel like you're the only one. You feel like it should be. Sometimes people misappropriately blame themselves when it is about maybe some of those insecure attachment styles or things that they didn't do. And so, and again, they think they're the only one. And so a lot of that really I end up dealing with is like, no, it's okay. And it's really normal. It's just not out there. No one's posting about that necessarily. Also, then looking to the other mother figures in your life. Like maybe you didn't have your mom, but maybe you had all these other wonderful people in your life, teachers, coaches, friends, maternal figures, people from your church, wherever, that as a conglomerate, they filled that mom role for you. And to look in those other directions too about no, you didn't get that from your mom, but you did get it from her. And no one taught you how to raise an infant. Your mom didn't teach you, but you had those two wonderful women from your church that really filled that role for you. If we put it all together, the family picture has all of these women in it, and that's a good place to look. Is it sad you didn't have your mom, as the mother you needed her to be? Yeah, but look what you did have, and that reframe to look in the other directions is also something really helpful for days like that.
Takes a village, I guess. Right?
It always does.
All right, family therapist Michael Klinkner talking about Mother's Day today, and Mr. Klinkner, I believe that's our time for today.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're looking forward to the next session. See the receptionist on the way out. She'll get you your bill and make sure your insurance is straight. Thank you so much. I've always wanted to do that.
We going to give him a mint or no?
Maybe a little mint.
Thanks for watching The Chris and Joe Show. Click to see more from Chris and Joe and tap the button in the middle to subscribe to KTAR News.